Welcome to week 5 of the PBR Wisconsin podcast. We're here rounding up the WIAA, and we're now at about the halfway point for the WIAA season. So we've got a lot to talk about this week. We're now in, I think, week 3 of good weather. Got to get the good weather conversation in. Did we have Friday? Was it that we had bad weather?
I think so. It was a mix between, I'd say, Friday and Saturday. Saturday was like extremely windy, just a lot of wind going around. So, but that's what you expect this time of year, I'd say.
Yeah, so maybe it was a good day for ground ball pitchers on Saturday, but we did have a lot of good baseball, and we had, we'll get to our big performances, big matchups of the week a little bit later. But before we get there, we want to highlight our teams of the week, the ones who performed the best. So we've got 4 divisions, 4 teams that we want to highlight. Maddox, get us started with our Division 4 team of the week.
Yeah, so honestly, the most winningest team in the WIA right now is Johnson Creek. They're 14-0 Blue Jays. They have a lot of star power. There's a bunch of prospects 1 through 9 in their order, really, that you don't. I believe their enrollment is 180 kids. I believe I checked today. You don't usually see that within those small schools, and they really took it to their competition this week, putting up double-digit runs and winning in really 6 innings or less throughout the majority of the week. And they're off to a 14-0 start, and we're kind of excited to see how they emerge from that Division 4 field.
Yeah, I love me some Division 4 baseball. I think we were once eliminated by Johnson Creek, and we did beat them one time, but not the time that it mattered. So I have some experience with Johnson Creek. I don't have as much experience with some of the other teams here. Division 3 team of the week is one that's, I think, a little bit farther outside the Milwaukee area. Who is our D3 team of the week?
Yeah, so up near the Fond du Lac area, Laconia, they're our Division 3 team of the week. They're, I believe, 12-0 right now. Once again, they just keep stringing together wins, very similar to Johnson Creek, where they've relied on a couple of arms early on and really their ability to put runs on the scoreboard. And they're off to a 12-0 start. We mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Lomira. They're each in the Flyway Conference. So it's between those two, really, and Campbellsport. That top 3 in that conference is really duking it out right now, and it's a lot of competition going on. But right now, Division 3 team of the week is Laconia.
I have to ask, this is completely unrelated, but does Laconia have a cool mascot? I feel like they would. Do you
I,
know offhand?
I believe they're the Spartans.
The
So
Spartans.
take that for
Okay.
what you want. Take it for what you will. Out of Rosendale, Wisconsin. So the Laconia Spartans, they're on a hot stretch right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, and then our Division 2 team of the week is Reedsburg. Tell us a little bit more about what Reedsburg did this week.
Yeah, the Beavers are going to make some noise really in our Power 25. I think that's what we determined. They're the Division 2 team of the week, and they've really it's been the bats and the top of their order, like Winston Alonso and Alex Southworth. We've talked about them before, really, and their offense has been able to overwhelm teams at times, and they're off to an 11-1 start. Their lone loss to that Edgewood team, who then they beat 15-2 on that Thursday when we were talking about a couple weeks back. They're in another tough conference, lots of competition to deal with, but Reedsburg, once again, off to a good start. We saw them in the Power 25 last year later on down the road, and this year they're making some noise a little earlier in the season.
Yeah, Reedsburg off to a good start. And another team that were moved down to Division 1. And is it safe to say Sun Prairie East, are they a contender for number 1 overall in the power rankings?
I would say so. Their undefeated record right now, they're already within that top 5 coming into the week and really posting 2 big wins over, I believe, number 24 ranked Madison Memorial. Really solidified their spot as one of the like true top teams, one of the week and 2 in the state. And Coach Marchese and that group, they've done a really good job. Super fundamentally sound again. I believe we've talked about them on the podcast before, and just their ability to manufacture runs. And they've gotten great work out of Drew Kavanaugh and Brady Stelzer on the mound, and really all those surrounding pieces with Sam Ostrenga and Max Glusick and John Hadley. And the names don't end really for that group. And they've got a healthy mix of upperclassmen and underclassmen that have really separated themselves. They're off to a 10-0 start right now and truly are contending for that number 1 spot in the rankings.
Yeah, they were number 3 last week, and then Oak Creek, who was number 1, they went down. Kimberly had a loss, and so Sun Prairie East could be in line for number 1. We'll see. Have to we don't want to commit to Sun Prairie East as the number 1 team right now. We haven't decided that, but definitely a possibility with the top 2 teams going down. So we're going to shift over to some of the big games of the week. We always preview the biggest games of the week upcoming, but then those sometimes become the games that we enjoy watching. Sometimes they end up being some different ones. And one that we maybe the outcome you could have expected, but some big performers in Arrowhead against Fort Atkinson. Tell us what happened in that one and who some of the standouts were for the Warhawks.
Yeah, so Warhawks really got an all-round performance for Arrowhead. Like that was both offensively and defensively, and it started with Peter Cuso, the Louisville commit, one of the top players in the 2025 class in the state. He tossed a complete game, 10 strikeouts, 2 hits, and really that was big coming off of a long injury that didn't allow him to perform really throughout the spring and summer of last year. We got to see him a bit in the fall early on, but when we're talking about Arrowhead's depth and really them accumulating a bunch of arms and some of the top arms really in the state and getting production out of Peter was really big for them there. And then, of course, relying on some more upperclassmen, Josh Gilroy, who's been a productive hitter for them in the past and continues to do so in his senior year here. He had 2 home runs for Arrowhead, 6 RBIs, I believe he totaled up. And that one, once again, providing for the offense. And Arrowhead overwhelming Fort Atkinson in really all aspects of the game for a dominant victory.
Yeah, Arrowhead right now 3-2 in the Classic 8 conference. They're 9-2 overall, which I think shows how strong that conference is, but also being in 4th place in the conference. Maybe not quite as strong as they were in years past, especially on the offensive side of things, but still have some things going for them. Up in Kimberly and Neenah played on Friday. I was trying to figure out where the geography of that would be. I guess it was played in Neenah, so head north from Fort Atkinson along Lake Winnebago, and Kimberly heavily favored against unranked Neenah. Kimberly was, as we previously mentioned, ranked number 2, but Neenah handed them their first loss of the season. Kimberly entered the bottom of the 6th up 10-3 and then proceeded to go walk, strikeout, ground out, hit by pitch, single, double, error, single, single, single before a strikeout ended the inning. So before the end of the inning, Neenah had grabbed an 11-10 lead. Kimberly ended up tying it actually in the top of the 7th, but then walked Andrew Carlson with the bases loaded for the walk-off. So Neenah handing Kimberly their first loss of the season. What is your big? Do you have a big takeaway from that one? And certainly it's not like Kimberly is maybe not the team we thought they were. It's just one game. But what can you draw from that one with Kimberly getting their first loss of the year?
Right, not at all. And Kimberly's still a super strong team, that's for sure. And really, I think that's the summary of conference play in any conference, really. And again, being a top team, you know that the opponent's going to give it your all. Like you're going to be challenged pretty much for every game, and I think that's what Neenah brought. There's definitely pieces there for Neenah that we've seen in the past, led by AJ Price, really, who have really stepped up for them and have made them a contender in that conference. And them challenging Kimberly, really, I noticed the resilience as you listed off. Their top bottom of the 6th inning, really, where they found that rally and they were able to create a spark and erase a 7-run deficit. Like that speaks to their resilience and their strength as a unit on the offensive end.
Yeah, I have to shout out Andrew Carlson because I used to play with his older brother. So I remember him running around when he was like 11, 12 years old, and now he's a good varsity player. I know he's ranked in our top 100 for the 2025 class. So cool to see him making an impact for that Neenah program. One school we don't normally talk about very much, but we were tipped off on something that happened over at Lakeland High School.
For sure. Yeah, they went back to back no hitters and arguably the best, I'd say, best pitching performance of the week. Ben Peterson started off with a 5 inning no hitter. And then Drew Warren, a true freshman coming onto the varsity stage, followed that up with a 7 inning no hitter. And that's something I've noticed content wise in the past, and being able to follow along with some of these small schools is really finding some underclassmen who can really find success on the mound and have proven to be able to get outs really in some of those northern schools, some of the Division 3, Division 4 schools even some Division two, I'd say. And then watching them contribute right away, it proved like it makes them an easy follow for the future and being able to keep up with them in the daily roundup and diamond notes and the rest of that stuff.
Yeah. Do you think Lakeland is the farthest north high school we've covered so far on the pod?
I'm not sure actually. Like, would a Leave a Strum count for that? They're
I think, well, I
they're
mean, Coach Christensen said that he doesn't consider Leva Strum very far north. So I was looking, Lakeland Union is located in Minocqua, which is maybe about 90 miles from the border of the UP, kind of in the central part of the state, west of Eagle River. So sorry if anyone from Lakeland Union is listening to this, but I haven't been there. It seems like a nice place. Maybe we should go sometime and see some good baseball. Obviously, they've got some good pitching there with a couple no hitters. Another good pitcher that we have seen. We saw him last week over at the Rock, and he went another 6 shutout, allowed just 1 hit against Milton, and that is Calvin Moreau. Tell us a little bit more. I know we talked about him last week, but let's just maybe spend 30 more seconds on Calvin Moreau because he's an outstanding talent.
for sure. Yeah, you said it pretty perfectly. Like it, his work on the mound was really impressive at the Rock, and his competitiveness, and honestly, the stuff like his breaking ball, he was snapping it and being able to continue to hold and maintain velocity throughout the entire portion of that game. Cold, windy day at the Rock. Like that's illustrating what he's done prior to that and what he's probably going to do for the rest of the season, I'd say. And not too surprised by his performance against Milton. You know, he's going to put together really great innings and perform on the biggest stage for them.
Yeah, he's always fun to watch. And there were a few other pitchers that were very good out over the course of the week. Germantown's Fletcher Filia went 6 shutout, 11 strikeouts against Port Washington. Notre Dame's Avery Duncan, complete game shutout against Preble up in Green Bay. Cedarburg's Kyle Anderson threw a complete game shutout. Janesville Craig's Drayton Liu went complete game shutout against Middleton. And Bayport's Ethan Plog went 5 no-hit innings with 12 Ks against Green Bay Southwest. 5 arms there. Who's one guy you want to highlight among that group?
Obviously, our staff saw Avery Duncan in that game against Green Bay Preble, and he obviously looked the part, and he's really elevated his game, showing up at the Super 60 and really being a star for Notre Dame Academy. And his stuff on the mound, if you watch the video and you take in some of the breaking balls he was snapping off and some of the really uncomfortable swings and misses that he got, and players looking passive in the batter's box against him, I think that speaks to really his arsenal and how effective it is and how his ability to snap a fastball and the velocity that he presents can really throw off the opposing team.
Yeah, and one other performance I wanted to highlight. Carter Cutts, our number one player in the 2025 class, went 5 1/3, 10 strikeouts, and went 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 doubles against West Bend East in their win. So it wasn't necessarily this notable game, but just a big kind of a maybe a indicative performance of how good Cutts has been. He's been pretty consistent on both sides of the ball, and there's a reason why he's number one in our class. Also, we wanted to highlight a few good games, good matchups that we did have in our preseason, or excuse me, the pre-week games of the week when we were looking ahead to this week. Number 12, Oconomowoc, and number 15, Kettle Moraine played on Thursday. And then number 14, Pewaukee and Oconomowoc played. Pewaukee beat Oconomowoc 7-5 in extras. Oconomowoc beat Kettle Moraine 3-2. Those are 3 teams that they're all in the same area. They're all in the 3 of the best teams in the Milwaukee area. So let's talk a little bit about that. Kettle Moraine's a team that we talked about last week. They're a little bit thin on pitching. Do you think this is a case where Oconomowoc is the better team and that lack of pitching from Kettle Moraine maybe got the best of them?
I think so. Obviously, it was a competitive game. That's kind of what we're noticing at the Dockhound Stadium this spring is that every game is competitive and there's a bunch of electricity with that. But Oconomowoc has a bunch of prospects, really top 1 through 9 again in their order that really can make a difference in any ball game. Any one of them can get hot at any moment, and that's really dangerous when you're playing any team. Like you don't know, you can't pitch around anyone, and they've been pretty consistent so far. And Kel Moraine, maintains that. They're very similar in that sense, and we've talked about them a lot and some of the talent that they have. Both teams just have to go through again a really tough schedule. You can't really take days off within their schedules between the conference and the non-conference opponents.
Yeah, a lot of good competition among those teams, and Pewaukee is a team. As I said, they beat Oconomowoc. We've got Coach Dobberstein coming on to the podcast in a minute here, so we won't talk too much about Pewaukee. But Grayson Zach, Minnesota commit, and probably more of a pitcher than he is a position player, but hit a 3-run shot to tie that game when they were down 5-2, and then they ended up winning in extras. So shows the resiliency of that Pewaukee team. It seems like they just always win. They're just consistent, and even if they don't maybe have the best prospects, which right now they do have a pretty prospect laden team, but they still get the job done and they still win.
That's true. I totally agree, and we'll talk with him later. But the same thing can be said for Menominee Falls, who we're going to highlight and talk about how they're 7-0 right now in the Greater Metro, and really starting to separate themselves a little bit as we enter the halfway mark of conference play. They had notched their 12-2 win over Brookfield Central and another win over Brookfield East during the week. That Brookfield Central game we originally attended as a staff. I believe that was Isaiah who went out to that game before it got rain delayed, and he obviously saw their offense go to work. Obviously, their pitching, we've talked about Kale Geiger and Jaden Forbes and that whole staff, but the offense came along and they started to produce and really took advantage of the Lancers and got on them early and really maintained that lead for the rest of the game.
Yeah, always love me some Menominee Falls talk. My beloved Menominee Falls Phoenix. I didn't go there, but they're my adopted team because I live in the district now. And they're right now they're 7-0 in that Greater Metro Conference. Sussex Hamilton's second at 5-1, and they're starting to separate themselves as the best team in a conference that historically is very good, and they don't really have the prospects they typically have either. But yet they're still finding a way to get the job done and deliver with guys who maybe a few college guys. Kale Geiger's maybe a D1 talent, but not the level of prospect that they've had in the past. So at this point in the show, we're going to get to our interview with Coach Adam Dobberstein. Doberstein's been coaching over at Pewaukee High School for about 25 years now. He's currently the co-head coach with his brother, Mark, and they're doing a great job there. They've done a great job for a long time. Have gone to state a number of times, produced some of the better baseball players in the area in recent years. So without further ado, here's our interview with Coach Adam Doberstein.
Coach, how are you doing this afternoon?
Doing great, Maddox. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And obviously, as many of us know, Pewaukee's off to a great start this year. And we kind of wanted to touch on that, some of your prospects, and kind of breaking down your program as a whole. So we just kind of wanted to start. What have been some of the keys to your success early on? Like you've strung together multiple good weeks here entering into week 6. Can you break down some of what you've seen as a coach here?
Yeah, it's been a fun start. We lost our first game Saturday afternoon to Lake Mills after having a really nice week where we beat Thomas More, who I think a lot of people regard as the most talented team in Division Two, and an Oconomowoc team then on Wednesday that is certainly a state contender in Division One, and won our first game Saturday against McFarland, and then finally lost one. So we started 13-0. It's the second tied for the second best start in school history. We started 13-0 in 2015, and that team went to the state tournament. We started 18-0 in 2021. That team went to the state tournament, so I guess that's a good omen. And we've been playing really good baseball. It's culture's good this year. We got a great group of kids. They've been playing hard and playing for each other. And so, we may not be quite as talented as a few of the teams we've had the last 5 or 6 years in some ways, especially offensively. But we're playing good baseball and playing together. So very happy with the start.
For sure. And obviously age, I think, and what we've seen just covering this for a little bit now, age and experience is obviously an important asset to every program. Can you talk about how some of your players, really some of your upperclassmen, have been able to take advantage of playing varsity baseball early on and now paying it off really in this season?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with this year. It starts with a quartet of juniors. We have 4 juniors on the team who were on our state tournament team as freshmen 2 years ago. They've been meaningful contributors, and it really is a special group. I mean, the first one is Grayson Zach. Grayson's obviously a Division I committee. He's going to the University of Minnesota. Grayson, to this point, has had a Division II State Player of the Year type start. He's pitched 3 divisional games for us. He's thrown 2 no-hitters and a one-hitter, and he's hitting third. He hit a 3-run home run against Oconomowoc in the 7th inning to send the game to extras. So he's been just incredible, and some maturation from him too. He's really settled into a leadership role and been a great team guy. And then one of my sons, Owen Dobberstein, is kind of his number 2 or co-number 1 type guy on the mound. Owen has been, almost as dominant. He struck out 47 in 24 innings, and is undefeated and hitting cleanup for us. And then Jackson Service, who's our starting catcher. Jackson's going to be a college football player. He's got incredible bloodlines. His dad was an All-American football player at North Dakota State, and his uncle Scott played 11 years in the big leagues as a catcher and is currently the manager for the Seattle Mariners. And Jackson's everything you would want in a catcher. Tough as they come. He's been awesome. He's going to be a college football player, and if he wasn't, he'd be able to play baseball, certainly at a high level. And then my nephew Drew Doberstein is our center fielder. He hits leadoff. He's very good in the outfield, and really a tone setter at the top of the lineup. And those kids are, you talk about experience. I think as much as it's experience, it's also the physicality. I mean, one of the things in the last 10, 12 years at the high school level is that the weight room is the differentiator. And if you're not physical, you're not going to be able to compete at a high level. And so Grayson is kind of an Adonis. He's 6'3", 210, and the other 3 are all football players. Jackson and Owen have both been first team all conference in football twice already as sophomores and juniors, and Drew was all conference this last year on the defensive side of the ball. And so it's a physical group, an experienced group, and they're just doing a great job. They play up the middle, they hit 1 through 4 in the lineup, and again, it's our top 2 arms. So they've done a great job. And then as long as we're talking about it, I have to mention our senior group too. We have Ryan Sofa has been, our top 3 arms. I would put up against anybody's top 3 arms in the state at any level. Ryan is right there. He's kind of pitching in a closer's role, and he's accepted that and done a great job. He's going to the University of Minnesota as well, but has decided not to play baseball, even though he for sure could if he wanted to someplace. And then we have 3 seniors who are going to play college baseball. Tyler Wallace is going to Aurora. Noah Long is going to pitch at Concordia in Wisconsin, and Brooks Bigler just committed to pitch at Bryant and Stratton. And those 3, plus our 5th senior, Carl Idom, who's, in some ways one of our best hitters. He's got a very good left-handed swing and a really productive guy. So, you're talking about 9 guys there that are either seniors or in their 3rd year at the varsity level. And that for sure is a differentiator.
You mentioned having them there. Their freshman year was the year that you guys went to state and maybe able to learn some things there. And you said that they kind of increased in their physicality in the weight room. But what has it been like to watch them as they gain more experience playing baseball, being a little bit more seasoned now at the varsity level? What has that development looked like, and what has it been like from your vantage point to see?
Yeah, I mean it's always neat to watch with talented kids, them go from being a freshman to a sophomore, sophomore to a junior, and junior to a senior, and even that junior to senior year, it can be a big year for some kids. Some kids develop late, some kids grow late, some kids just the confidence and maturity happens late. So, it's always neat to see that happen. And this group has been, I mean, we had a painful loss at the state tournament 2 years ago. We've had a couple of them 2 years ago and 3 years ago, but 2 years ago we had a 6-2 lead in the 7th inning. And everything that could have happened in that inning happened. We gave up 7 runs and then fought our way back and had the tying run thrown out at home plate on a very tough call. And so that sticks with you, even if you're a freshman. I mean, I think it's for seniors and for coaches, it's something that you just never get over. But for that group, I think they remember that, and I think that they're still appropriately hungry to kind of make that go away at some point. So.
For sure. And I wanted to touch on Grayson and Owen and really them emerging as your top 2 arms pretty much and taking on a lot of the heavy innings as starting pitchers. What has been one thing about their performances, about their execution that you've really enjoyed watching so far?
Yeah, it's they are as good. Um, at being strike throwers as any of the really talented pitchers that we've watched over the last 5 or 10 years in our state. I mean, they fill up the zone with multiple pitches, and as and Grayson was physical early and threw a little harder earlier, but as the velocity has now climbed, and they're still able to do that, that's the biggest thing is, when you're able to throw, and all three of our guys, Ryan is in that category too. When you have guys in the mid to upper 80s touching 90, and all three of them have now touched 90 in a game this season, and they're able to fill up the zone with that kind of velocity, you're going to win a lot of games at the high school level.
How important has it been also to get that good pitching? It's not like you're facing weak competition, but you're in a pretty good conference in the Woodland West. So how important has it been for the pitching to kind of set the tone for the team?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the pitching has set the tone. I mean, when you don't put people on base, when your strikeout totals are what they are, you don't have to be quite as good defensively. If you're really good behind the plate, like we are with Jackson, and have some experienced guys, we haven't been tested as much as an average team would be defensively. So it masks some of that. And it also allows you to play a little looser offensively. If you can scratch a run or two early in a game and play from ahead, or even if you're down a run or two, it's not like, when you get down 4 or 5 runs, it can feel insurmountable if you're facing a good arm and he's in the zone. And that Saturday, our first loss, we lost 4-0, but it was kind of the first time that we had fallen behind by more than a couple of runs. And so that it was a good learning tool. I think it's something for us to be able to talk about with the kids about how important it is to set the tone early and to try to build a lead. And it's a lot easier to play from ahead than play from behind. But the pitching for sure has been the key thing for the team to this point.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go off that a little bit, talking about the Woodland West and its toughness and playing through that conference. You have to go through New Berlin, Eisenhower, and Wisconsin Lutheran in the next couple of weeks here. What's something that you want to see your team improve upon or learn from the Lake Mills loss and see your team pretty much grow in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I will say I think that the Woodland West is the best Division II type conference in the state. I mean, you take both New Berlin schools are really talented. You take Wisco, you take Greendale. Pius has been a little down the last few years, but Kevin Kihas has been there 25 years and is an outstanding coach. It's a really tough league, and in terms of what I would say to that is we have been pretty good offensively at being a team that executes. We've got some grit to us. We don't strike out a lot. We've been given a lot of opportunities to get a squeeze down, to get a sacrifice bunt down in a close game, and we've done pretty well. But we need to be better. To beat those teams, you can't afford to give away opportunities to build a lead, to scratch a run, to tie a game. If you get the leadoff guy on in an inning, you've got to be not perfect, but you got to be closer to it than we've been to this point. So that's by far the number one thing that we need to be even better at down the stretch is the way we play the game offensively.
I'm just curious because you've been there for a while. What has it been like to see sort of the evolution of the Pewaukee athletics department as a whole? I feel like you keep hearing about Pewaukee producing these big athletes. Of course, the Watt brothers. Recently, it was Jack Golke, and then you guys have had a ton of success with the baseball program. So, what has it been like to be part of that and to also witness it in some of the other athletics programs? And sorry, I forgot women's basketball too,
Yeah.
being excellent. Men's basketball right now. You could go on and on. So, what has that been like?
Yeah, it's been super neat. I mean, this is year 24 for me at Pewaukee. So when I started, we were almost a rural school. The community just felt different. We were just a shade over 600 students, and now we're between 850 and 900 depending on the year. And that extra student population combined with kind of a shift in the demographics. I mean, athletics is expensive, and so there's no question that when you're in a community that is a little more affluent, the opportunities that kids have growing up to play and develop and get coaching are there. But Pewaukee's been kind of almost a fairy tale. I mean, it's we've now won state championships and been to state and just about every sport in the last 5 years. We've got great coaches in a lot of our programs. We've got a great athletic director, Jeff Behrens, who really gets it and cares about the kids. And so we've really been fortunate, and we have preserved the multi-sport athlete a little bit better, I think, than some places. And so if you look at our school the last 5 years, you look at our boys basketball team, the state championships, several of those kids were 2 or 3 sport athletes. And so you need that. And it's hard. I mean, if you're an athlete today and you're kind of on the fringes, like, am I going to make the team or am I going to crack the lineup? I think it's perfectly understandable to make a choice that, hey, I've got to invest the time if I want things to happen, the way I want them to happen. But at the same time, when you've got some collaboration between coaches and programs, and you can keep some of those kids, doing both, it really helps because there's only so many athletes in a building, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. So,
What is the biggest difference you do notice among athletes you might have on your team who are 2 or 3 sport athletes versus those who are not and maybe are baseball only?
yeah, I mean, I'd be careful to generalize because there are some exceptional baseball only kids, but I do think being in the competitive arena, as much as possible helps you, can only help you, and so I think that most of our multi sport kids are pretty competitive, and I think high school football is great. I mean, I love high school football, and I do think that baseball and football tends to work pretty well, and our football baseball guys are pretty tough guys too. They're pretty physical and pretty tough mentally and physically, and so that's an important thing too.
So in maintaining the success for Pewaukee, can you break down really, and you've been able to experience it before, but what do you need to see from this group really to make a run back at the state tournament and really compete in the Division II field and continue to hold your ground?
Yeah, I think that I mentioned earlier. I think that our offensive execution, we've got great buy-in from this group. We like to play a style that we're going to ask kids to bunt. We're going to ask kids to see pitches. We're going to ask kids to wear pitches, in critical moments to get up on the plate and really play that style. And every team's different. You get varying levels of buy-in sometimes. This group is bought in. We just need to be a little bit better at our execution. I don't think if our average level of execution here the first half of the year stays what it is, I could see that biting us. So we've got to keep getting better, and we've got to keep getting better defensively. It's in high school baseball in Wisconsin in the spring, you're outside so little and then when you can be outside, you're usually playing games. That the opportunity to practice on the field outdoors is a little bit limited, and so we just need some more time. We need to see more fly balls in practice in the outfield, and we need to see more ground balls on both dirt and turf, and so I think offensively and defensively we still have a ways to go. If our pitching stays the way it's been, I'm comfortable with our pitching, but we have to keep getting better for sure.
For sure. And that's really all we had on our end. Did you have anything else to add really about your program, Pewaukee in general, or anything in that nature?
No, I mean you know, I tend to wind up doing these interviews. My brother always has me do them, but I wouldn't be coaching without him. He is the huge key to what we do at this point. We became co-head coaches in 2010. I had been coaching for 9 years and kind of reached a stage with my family where you're like evaluating what you can keep doing. And so he came in. He does all the hard work, and really just does a fantastic job creating the culture. And then our staff is awesome. Andy Iris has been with us for 13 years now, but before that, he was our junior pirate coordinator. He had a son who was an all-state player for us, and he's great. And Steve McGowan was a captain on our first state team in 2015. He's now our pitching coach. And I'll actually give a quick shout out. My pitching coach for most of the first 22 years I was here is a guy named Nate George, who just took the interim job at Port Washington, took over as their head coach. But he was a huge reason for our success for a lot of those years, what he did with our pitchers. So we're lucky to have a great staff with Chris Treadwell and Nick Kramer at the freshman and JV level also, and Ian Petoskey helping them. And so we've got some great coaches, and we're really lucky to have those guys involved.
A big thank you to Coach Adam Dobberstein and for sharing his thoughts really and insights within the Pewaukee baseball program and their longevity and success. And they'll be competing for a Division II crown come the end of the year. So they're going to be a fun group to follow. We're going to continue to follow these teams, obviously. David, could you present really some of the games of the week that we're looking forward to watching?
Yeah, early in the week, we've got Eisenhower taking on that Pewaukee Pirates team. They'll play on Tuesday and Wednesday. Franklin and Oak Creek also play. They play three times beginning on Tuesday. Of those two games, I guess, which one are you more excited for, or maybe you're excited for both? Tell us a little bit about those matchups.
Obviously excited for both, but the Franklin Oak Creek rivalry, really, that's brewed. I've only been around it for a couple of years, but it's really taken off, and those two teams are super talented. Obviously, Oak Creek has been our number one team up to this point throughout the entirety of the year before dropping a game to Indian Trail earlier this week. But in their other games, they've really shown the ability to score in bunches, and then also be able to shut down teams. Ryan Bucha, Peyton Gibbon, really that pitching staff. We saw Cade Palkowski get up on the mound this weekend and do it. They have the staff really to maintain that three-game series in the Southeast Conference that those teams have to play every week. And of course, Franklin, they keep continuing to fight. They're battling through some injuries and that stuff, but really their depth has been for show. Like it's been on display for sure. And they keep winning games and are really knocking on the door of the Power 25.
Yeah, big matchups early in the week. Franklin and Oak Creek and Eisenhower Pewaukee, they both play on Wednesday also. In addition to a whole slate of games, Arrowhead and St. Thomas More, that should be a good one. Monona Grove and Sun Prairie East, Hartford and Nicolay. Arrowhead and St. Thomas More, that's a good one because hopefully we see Peter Cuso on the mound. Hopefully St. Thomas More throws one of their better guys, maybe Sam Mommer. We've seen Sam Mommer a lot this year, but they've got a good lineup. And so that's one that I'm excited for. Monona Grove, again, hopefully we see Calvin Moreau on the mound in that one against Sun Prairie East, who we talked about as potentially the number one team in the state right now. So what are you most looking forward to in either of those games? Maybe Hartford Nicolay. That one should be pretty good. We got a good look at Nicolay, and Hartford's got Carter Cutts and some other guys. So who are you looking for in that Wednesday slate?
Yeah, after that Arrowhead St. Thomas More game, the Monona Grove, Sun Prairie East. That's about two heavyweights here in the Madison area in the 608. Obviously, both teams really 1 through 9 again. Monona Grove, especially in the top of their order, and we're talking about bats, just really can produce and they can put up runs in a hurry. Sun Prairie East, in the past, they've been known to manufacture, but really they've been really taking it to teams. And Sam Ostrenga has put up, we mentioned it before, he's put up 5 for 5 performances before in the past, and they've really started to find their rhythm on the offensive end. And of course, their pitching has always been there. Defensively, they're solid. And the same could be said for Monona Grove. So they're two pretty equal teams right now. And that's a non-conference matchup, just super intense here in Madison. And Hartford Nicolay, more of the same, more in the Milwaukee area, really. We've seen both teams, as you said before, but really it's going to come down to arms, who's going to make the most plays in that game, and being able to limit defensive errors because both teams can really solidify themselves on the defensive end. That's what they rely on for the most part. And we've seen their offense come in spurts early on, but that's kind of a battle for first place in the North Shore Conference right now, which is super exciting.
Yeah, and then we had later in the week we had North. We've got a few good matchups there. Hudson plays against DC Everest. Is that the Evergreens, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm learning my mascots. Everest Evergreens. How do we feel about that one?
Oh, good. I love it. The tree logo, it's pretty awesome. It gives
Is
it
it
gives a
okay?
lot of northern Wisconsin vibes. That's
Okay.
what it makes me
My
feel.
roommate, my freshman year, my roommate was from DC Everest, but I never talked with him about the Evergreen mascot, so I don't know how he feels about it. But that one's going to be on Friday, and then Saturday we've got the Altoona Railroaders playing against Aquinas, and De Pere playing against Notre Dame Academy. We talked a little bit about Notre Dame Academy, but among those three matchups, what are you looking for in some of those matchups outside the Milwaukee area or the Madison area?
Yeah, the Altoona Aquinas matchup is really I think it's under the radar right now. Altoona is a really strong Division II team. They have a couple of future D1 prospects on that group committed to a couple of Division I schools, and they've really once again found their rhythm early on. They're hovering around that Power 25 on the bubble team. That's what they did for most of last year, making it on a couple of times, ranging in that 20 to 25 area. And the same could be said for Aquinas, the Division III runner-ups from last year. They've gone out to a strong start. They had to come over to the Waukesha area and play in a triangular this weekend and showed pretty well. They performed pretty well. They took down West Osha Central, so them being a Division III team, I don't see them as a Division III team. I think they're playing at another level compared to that. They have the talent to make a run for sure, and that's going to be a good battle on Saturday.
Yeah, so a lot happening, a lot of good matchups this week, as there have been for a number of weeks in the WIAA here at around the halfway point. Maddox, before we go, what's one thing that you're excited to see this week?
Oh man, one, I need my finals to be done. That is one thing that I am very excited to see this week. But honestly, we talked about those games of the week. That's going to be going on every day, and I'm excited to see. Really, we've seen upsets early on. Like obviously, like that's the case. I'm excited to see who the next bubble team is that can really make a move in our rankings. And we talked about teams like Reedsburg, teams like Nicolay, who's gotten hot as of late. I want to see more of those teams and see how really they're able to take down some more powerhouses and emerge as top 25 teams in the state.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be watching for those. Hopefully, have some big performances, maybe big upsets. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe our power rankings will be shifting around again at this time next week. But certainly, a lot to be looking for in the WIAA, and we're excited for the upcoming week and a lot to cover for next week. So, as always, this is David Go and Maddox Durst signing off for the WIAA Roundup PBR Wisconsin podcast. Until next time.